So could I call upon the participants of the panel, Nitin, Saluja, Chaayos, Chakradhar, Gade, Country Delight, Prashanth, Aluru, TMRW, Vedang, Patel, Sold Store, Shivani, Poddar, FabAlley. I'm Deepak Gaur, who's partner Elevation Capital to chair. So could I please call upon, so just a brief introduction. Deepak, you all probably know very well, he's a partner at Elevation Capital. He focuses on the consumer brands, also enterprise SaaS and agri-tech businesses. His portfolio includes Rivigo, Book My Show, Country Delight, Sugar, Chaayos, so some of them are on the panel. And prior to Elevation, he's been a consultant with McKinsey and a software engineer with IBM Global Services, and he's an alumnus of IIT Kanpur and IIM Lucknow. Over to you, Deepak.
Thank you. Welcome everybody, and it is my absolute pleasure to have, as Vedang said, a star-studded panel. And maybe I can just do a quick round of intro, starting with Vedang. He's the co-founder of Sold Store, India's largest pop culture brand, diversifying very aggressively across channels and across product categories. Chakradhar, I'm sure most of you or many of you are customers, is the co-founder and CEO of Country Delight. Started with a very simple offering, ensuring quality, hygienic, and pure milk, but again is becoming convenience and pure food destination across categories. Nitin is the co-founder and CEO of Chaayos. I think it is a ubiquitous chai chain in Gurgaon and very soon will be in the country. So I'm very excited to have him here. Shivani, co-founder of FabAlley in India. Again, most of you would have known the brand or been active user. Welcome, Shivani. And Prashanth brings a very different perspective. He is the CEO of Tomorrow, Aditya Birla Venture, which is a house of brands aggregating and taking majority stakes in different brands, but with a different philosophy of having them founder run versus a corporate holding company setup. So very excited to have all of you here. And for the benefit of everybody here, I would like to start with a very core question, since we are called niche D2C. And at least I personally have always struggled and debated when I meet companies that if you're going into a large market, there are already people who are serving it. So you are almost forced to start with a niche and differentiate yourself. But if you start with a niche, investors would say this is a niche business. How will it become scalable and large? So how did you go through that journey in terms of deciding what to start with, this trade-off involved, being differentiated, but attacking a large market given that you want to create a meaningful dent in terms of what you want to build? I would love to have your thoughts around that.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you so much for the warm welcome, Deepak. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you today. So I run a fashion house, as Deepak has told you. We have two brands, FabAlley and India. And from a niche business perspective, very interesting, because when we were starting out and a few years in the journey, we're an apparel company, right? And there are all of you in the room, all the women here, you shop from hundreds of brands, right? Indian, international, all sorts of brands. There's no wardrobe which has 2, 3, 4 brands, and hence it's such a large market, but there's so much competition. So even while I was looking at it and thinking of what is it that we should be doing, I think the first thing was that within the apparel market, what is it that is underserved? So, which is where the niches come in, and I started India, which is our ethnic wear brand, which is on the occasion wear side. And we said that, instead of doing what everybody's doing, which is to do day wear, kurtas, etc., let's look at a product market which doesn't exist. Let's look at something which is very unorganized, and that's something that, I would kind of really, urge everybody to think about that, can we look at something that's super unorganized and organize it? And that's where we came from. To say that, today's occasion means like if you have to go out for a party, a wedding, any of those kind of occasions. So if you look at that market and say, what are women wearing there? And can we, instead of going after every possible segment in women's wear, just go after that? The catch there is, again, exactly what Deepak said, that Is it too small? Is it going to be large enough? Is it like it's a niche, but can we build a large business in that? But personally, as a founder, I would always say that if we can identify, a large category, and yet in that category we can identify one segment which we want to focus on and really go after, that's a great place to start. Yeah.
I'll maybe just add to what Shivani said. We took while Shivani was trying to take a part of a much larger established category and started with the niche and is growing from there. We took a totally different approach. We took the approach of picking up a product that could be really large market, but which was not being served in the right shape and form, the way the customer today wants it. And that product is simple chai. Chai was available everywhere, in everybody's home, outside of home, everywhere. Yet, as ubiquitous the beverage was, there was no standardization, no customization, no hygiene. The moment you stepped out of home, all those things went out of the window. So, different approaches for different business. You will always need to see for yourself what will work better. Having said that, I'll just say one thing, something that's non-compromisable. Eventually, the market should be really large. I think that's one thing that I always had at the back of my mind when starting up, and I see a lot of entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs, have that at the back of their mind on day zero.
Yeah, I don't think niche means small market. I just think it means a very specific proposition, but the market can be large because, firstly, I think anything in India just has a large market. That's the strength here. But niche doesn't mean small market. It just means a unique proposition which is very sharp and then relatable to a large customer.
Yeah. Just, I think that's pretty much what Nitin and everyone else has summarized. That's pretty much it. But one thing I would like to add here is that when you start out and when you are fresh into something, there is a lot of unrealism that you need to go with. And that sort of makes you think really big. But when you're acting, it's purely a function of what you have in the bank and what you build with. And when Deepak asked, why would an investor say, when an investor says it's a very niche segment, what would you do about it? At least what helped us was to plan a fundraise that takes us to a certain scale that makes sense for an investor. So when Country Delight was a 5 crore ARR business, we had a plan. We knew that the target market was very big and the ambitions were always big. But the idea was to raise $1 million or $1.5 million to build a 100 crore business. And finding that sweet spot, that promise, that functional promise, which takes you to that is what we obsessively focused on to reach the first milestone.
Yeah, I guess for me, the lens is slightly different given we are a house of brands player and our idea is to sort of help brands go beyond that niche. So in that sense, sort of what took you to 0 to 1 or 1 to 10 is fundamentally different from what will take you from 10 to 100 and 100 to 1,000. So in many ways, what we've seen in the offline world with winning brands coming up in several categories, we're looking to replicate that in the digital first world and hopefully in a more capital efficient way because I've sort of seen many VC funded brands which don't get the balance right between what is needed to scale a brand versus, let's say, just focusing on short-term growth. So over time, I think for you to come out on the other side and build a winning brand fundamentally requires a different playbook. So from our lens, the way we're looking at our portfolio is essentially 2 kinds of markets. One is existing large TAM markets where it's moderate to high growth, but equally there are probably many undifferentiated labels out there in e-commerce, which are largely today what I would call marketplace labels or seller labels. From that universe to sort of come out and say if there's a breakout brand, like for example, what Shivani has built with FabAlley in the fashion space. Brands like FabAlley, which sort of break out from being just one of many undifferentiated brands, but in large, high TAM markets. On the other hand, there are also emerging categories which are hyper growth today, but still very, very early in their journey, right? So for example, if I take Soul Store as an example, I think the positioning may be streetwear, the positioning may be casual wear, the positioning may be pop culture, but fundamentally from looking at the proposition, what is a Soul Store solving for the end consumer is really where it comes down to. So in some of the emerging high growth but small TAM categories, I think there's definitely a way for D2C brands to really get a head start and get ahead of this national or international or private label brands and really create and that one could call a niche, but over time even there, the category itself is evolving and hence the ability for you to build a large brand, it does exist. So that's how we're looking at our portfolio, a good mix of subcategories which are high growth, high TAM, but equally emerging categories which are hyper growth.
Got it. No, very helpful. So essentially, what all of us are saying is, we are not interested or not very excited by what is fundamentally not a large market. However, you can't start big, at least in D2C. So you start by focusing on either a niche or a very clear differentiator. And I think it would be very valuable for our audience to understand in your individual journeys, what were some of those differentiators, entry wedges, niches, trial inducers that you had? And if I could add a twist to it, what you thought would work, that I think these are my 5 differentiators, but eventually it turned out that 3 of them were working, 2 were not working, and you were forced to find something new. I think that would be very interesting to know.
I'll take a shot at this. One of the things that our consumers, even before we started our first Chaayos store, anybody who could be a potential customer, I ended up meeting some 300 odd of them, and a question that got different answer every time I asked it to somebody was, what kind of chai do you drink? And people would know their chai, but no 2 chais nearly ended up being the same. You look around your household, that's something around, when I say around your household, look at your neighbors, look at your relatives, how do their households drink their usual chai? You are likely to get very different answers. Because there was no least common denominator, so the answer was that people are drinking different kind of chai, which is not available anywhere outside of their homes. That was one of our big differentiators that continues to be a big differentiator for us till date. Second thing that has been our differentiator is fresh food. You usually go to cafes, you have a food display out there from which you pick what do I want to eat along with the beverage that you are having, be it a cup of chai or be it a cup of coffee. At Chaayos, right from day one, we've never had that because those 300 interviews sort of revealed that's one of the barriers for the customer to pick up something that's not looking fresh. And we've stuck to these 2. In fact, an image that never goes out of my mind, one of those 300 people said, you look at sandwiches sitting in that display and the edges of those sandwiches are all tight and raised simply because and then they don't look fresh. That image never goes out of my mind. So right from day one of Chaayos, we never really had fully prepared food on display. Every food has been assembled fresh right from day one. Those 2 became our differentiators that were identified that have certainly worked for us.
Was there anything you thought will be a differentiator but customers didn't care?
We thought that it was not really a differentiator, but a part of the market that we thought was really big at that point of time was a lot of healthy snacking option, lot of non-milk chais at the same time. So healthy food snacking, lot of non-milk chais. That severely tanked and it tanked immediately. I was very hopeful that this is what the macro trend is. People are becoming more conscious, so this should certainly show signs of growth. it never really, we persisted with it for 24 months after our launch, but it never really showed any sign of being wanted.
Yeah. So when we started Country Delight, coming from a financial services background, none of us, neither me nor my partner, none of us had any understanding about this entire space. It was frankly a good-looking Excel sheet that made us get into this business. But the whole thing started with us trying to understand what the customer wants. We started with the assumption that we'll give the best possible product. And when we did that, we thought we'll never make money out of this. And then we started figuring out the right zone where there is a reasonable price that a customer would pay for a good product that leads to be a functional difference from a customer point of view. And it took us 2-3 years of iterations because we were bootstrapped for the first 4-5 years of our existence. Took us a lot of iterations in supply chain, iterations in processing, in last mile, in cold chain, in customer go-to-market, to figure these things out individually and then build it out to a good PMF that customers appreciate. The one big takeaway, at least for us, was that at least in the initial PMF, it should be very, very functional. The differentiator in what you sell has to be super functional rather than aesthetic or brand driven. After that, once you have one success, building on it starts with what you think of as a brand and what you can build around that. That is the one big takeaway that at least we had.
Very good. It's a very relevant point.
Yeah. I think what's very common is that everyone's evolved. Because when you start and whatever you think, project a business to be, I am sure it's nowhere close to that. Maybe on the outside it is, but on the inside it's really not. Because businesses are not made on Excel sheets. Those are the easiest, stories you can fool yourself with. What we thought we were going to build was a very hardcore fandom destination. Like, I thought like every Batman fan, Superman fan, Harry Potter, those would be the hardcore fans, would be our customers. Actually, it turned out quite the opposite. People just wanted cool casual wear, and in that, they found the Batman, Superman, Harry Potter. Nobody's actually a fan of who wears it. It's just apparently cool. And that's the learning that we had. And it wasn't even a learning that we understood 6 months down the line. Maybe also because I was 23 and I was kind of stupid. But over time, we realized that people just wear this. That's the biggest difference from what we thought we were starting to what we eventually ended up with.
So when we started, I think our clear proposition was to really solve for 3 things, which was, make fashion trendy for all the women in this country, make it affordable so that, women don't need to think twice before buying the product, and really make it accessible. It should be available everywhere in the country we have a large consumer base in tier 1, tier 2 cities, and really, make it available across the country. So I think that was really the proposition. And, with India, with our other brands, what we really said is let's look at, what really designers are doing and what really luxury is doing, and say that how can we make it super high street and still make it look like that. And I think that is the proposition that we were really going after in terms of the differentiation, and continue to do that today. But I think one big learning along the way is that while we were doing this for women, I just thought that men wear really boring clothes, right? So why can't we do it for men? Like everywhere, everyone
Those who don't wear the Soul Store, obviously.
Yeah, except Soul Store. But everyone in this room is wearing either a solid shirt or a striped shirt, broadly. So we said that, if all the men just wear these clothes, why can't we kind of get in some principles, from women's wear, and say that why can't we make menswear interesting? And we started a menswear brand. It's about 4 or 5 years back. And as Nitin said on healthy food, I was also quite gung-ho. I thought we can make this a big business, and, really kind of made shirts which had leather patches and, really differentiated things, and then men hated it. And we kept going after it for like 18 months, and then after that we were like, this is not going to work, and after that we've not touched men. So I think, as Vedang was saying, every business has its learnings and its journeys. And I think it's great to make mistakes, right? Because along the way, I mean, if you don't try, then how will you know? And I think that's the big learning for me.
Yeah, I guess just building on Shivani's point, given we focus a lot on fashion and lifestyle, I think part of the challenge with fashion and lifestyle is it's a repertoire category. Consumers are fairly finicky. They can switch without, without much of a difficulty. So how do you keep them coming back to you? Because often what we see is D2C brands get the initial acquisition engine right, but the whole retention, loyalty, and brand recall is where I think fundamentally the engine breaks down, right? So today, if you look at a Zara in the offline world, it doesn't matter what Zara is selling, right? End of the day, Zara gets it right in terms of consumers walking back into that store and continuing to want to buy Zara. And there are many layers to why you buy Zara. Now, how do you replicate that in the digital first world with the advantage that digital has? So for me, it sort of goes down to the fact that often as a brand owner, you may not know the answer. How do you actually spot the trends that may be taking off? How do you sort of do rapid experimentation, test and learn, and almost align to what the consumer wants rather than assume that you know the answer, but stay core to the true proposition that you're representing the brand for. So the core value prop has to be very distinct and unique, and you can't sort of compromise on that. But the rest of it, I think almost sort of listen to the consumer and go where they want you to go. And if you look at something like a Shein, the reason a Shein is known to be a Shein is because, not because they're the most fashion-forward brand, it's because they get their tech right. They get their whole trend spotting to demand forecasting to sensing right. And then they align with what the consumers want to see. And replicating that at scale is where I think we are trying to at least identify founders who want to partner with us. And we build in the investments that will take them from 10 to 100 and then 100 to 1,000.
Thank you for bringing out those behind the curtain stories and insights on what worked, what didn't work. Now, I'm pretty sure all of you would have experienced it, but a very familiar story that plays out when you have the so-called product market fit achieved is, okay, we have a great brand, there is PMF, let's grow larger. So you will hear different terms in your investor group, founder group. Somebody would say cross-sell, somebody would say brand extension, and different kind of jargons, but people want you to, or even you as founders, leverage that brand and do many other things. So whether it is geographic expansion, product expansion, experiments with price points, I think it would be very interesting to hear those journeys in your respective companies. At what point did you think, what did you wait for before thinking of extensions or doing other things or cross-sell? And how did you think about selection and whether to go experiment with geographies or price points or new product categories?
So at least with Country Delight, Deepak, where this was a very tricky aspect when we were thinking through the business. And there was a lot of divided opinion in this. So it took us 4 years to figure out our product market fit, so to say, in milk. And when we raised our seed money, we quickly expanded in NCR and we grew like 6-7x in a year. And we realized that, this is great. Then what our mental model revolved around, the business we had built had a 2-year head start in terms of competitive advantage. And we were thinking big as a business, and we thought that it would be good to capture all the geographies at least, or all the big markets where we would want to be, since we had PMF in one city, rather than focusing on going wide and, doing other products. And hence our choice, while this was a far more tougher thing for us, because having a customer and increasing the products around that customer is a little easier than going to new geographies, setting up supply chains, and then acquiring customers. But in the long run, it gave us advantage over all the 5 markets, and today it places us in a much better position across all the markets that we were operating and we have been operating. Once that is done, we've started thinking wider in terms of new products and new product categories and leveraging the strengths that we've built in our business model.
We were not as wise as Chakri. We got our Series A money in the bank and we entered a new geography, only to struggle with that geography for next 3 years. We went to Bombay. We did not make head or tail of Bombay for next 3 years. It was only in the fourth year, 2019 onwards, is when we started to get Bombay right. I think I totally concur with what Chakri said, and I think just going broad, geography-wise, is something I can vouch for is tough, much tougher than what it seems like. That यहाँ पे तो crack हो गया है. Let's crack the same thing somewhere else, and especially like we run offline stores. Lot of manpower dependence, lots of processes, lots of daily checklists, lots of things that you can get wrong, and we did get them wrong. Just building upon products, going broad in a particular geography, going deeper and deeper into a particular geography, I think can be a slightly less riskier option.
Let me try and give a positive spin. I think it's about when you've grown the brand on a specific proposition, can you expand other products with that same proposition? Now what I mean to say is, okay, what's a brand? A brand is the expectation a customer probably has from your reputation. So I think the expectation customers have from us is great design, great quality, maybe. I think just those two. So using this, can we launch more categories? And we did. We've continued. I think t-shirts used to be 98% of our sales 3 years back. Now it's lesser than half. Every time we launch new categories, we realize that the repeats went up, the customer value, lifetime value, all of that goes up. The AOVs, the margins go up. And we also make sure that these categories are brand accretive. Let me tell you what I mean by that. If Nike starts gym equipment, I think it's brand accretive. If Nike starts leather black shoes, that's brand dilutive. Do you understand the difference? So we thought that adding some of these categories, as long as they're brand accretive, easy to replenish and easy to source, and increase our gross margins, we should add categories. What we found is that because we don't have the operational challenges you all have, okay, very different ball game. We found that the cost of experimentation has been lesser for us than the cost of opportunity of not doing it. So a very different story from operationally challenging businesses.
Sorry. So for us, actually, we were building for the first 8 years of our journey for the country India, and I have to add country because our brand's also called India. And then about 18 months back or so, we started expanding internationally. And initially, I think there was a lot of and a lot of that expansion came from because we were seeing that in our stores, like NRIs were coming in and buying like 10, 15 products, and they're like, I live in New York, I have no access to like ethnic wear. And so there was a lot of demand, and then we started expanding internationally, and I think a completely different ballgame in terms of how you acquire customers, what kind of delivery expectations do they have, sizing in the US, for example, even Indians there, so many kind of those things which you don't have to kind of, which you've solved for already in this country. And then you every country we go to, how do we look at those things differently? But today, in the last 18 months, international is almost 50% of our D2C business. And I think, which is why, really that point of saying that we've already reached a certain place in India, we've already solved for a lot of things around the product, the quality. I mean, some of the things Vedang said, like, why are customers coming to us? Like, great fashion and great quality and a great price. And if building on these three things, we can acquire, like, consumers around the world, can we go after that? I think that was really the turning point, and that's something that we're going to continue to build on.
Yeah, I guess just building on both Vedang and Shivani's point, I think what we tend to see with founders, especially in fashion lifestyle, is they often sort of solve for short-term growth, end up doing a series of moves which sort of fundamentally dilute the brand. Like in many cases, the short-term growth problem will always exist, right? Whether you have a VC investor or an angel investor or whether you're bootstrapped, fundamentally the short-term growth problem doesn't go away. But if you're expanding just for solving the next quarter or the next couple of quarters, I think that's where we sort of push back hard with the founders and say, look, this is not yet a point where your brand should extend into many channels, many price points, many category extensions as well. Because eventually, while you may get some immediate ARR coming in, but net, can you sort of see the path to becoming a large brand in all of those categories is quite hard to see. I mean, just something as simple as from being a D2C brand, becoming a marketplace also brand in itself is a big challenge, right? Because the channels are different, the price parity is different, the price and discount game is different. So how do you even get a flywheel between D2C and marketplace itself is a big problem. So let's say you open up international, that's another big problem. So purely from an execution lens, I would say, it's very important to be thoughtful while it'll be tempting to move in all directions. And over time, of course, you'll get to a Zara kind of positioning where you'll have the right to play across many categories. I mean, today, menswear, women's wear, kids wear, etc. Zara is known for what they're known for. But doing that too early in your journey will be quite limiting, is at least our take.
Got it. Oh, thank you. I think one other dimension of expansion or foraying into is tech companies are being asked to open stores, offline companies are asked on their digital strategy. So, and then they've found a compromise and coined the term omni-channel. So how have you thought about going to a different channel? Like in case of Chaayos, thinking about digital strategy. And in case of Country Delight, is a question we keep discussing. When would Country Delight ghee be available in a Limache, say? So just in terms of offline to online, online to offline, and omni-channel approach, what are the debates in your mind? When did you decide? How do you decide?
We've actually never thought of business in channels. We only continued to listen to what our customers had to say about just one question. Where do you expect Chaayos to be available to you? And very early on, our first experiment with self-delivery started in January 2014. Because our customers were looking to order chai for their offices, for their meetings, and that's how that entire thing kicked off. Did not become too large at that point of time, but just trying to land one very simple point. For us, it was only asking that question: where does our customer expect us to be? Ask customer that question, you will get a response to it. And because being available for home delivery for chai, as simple as it may sound today, chai ki delivery ghar pe aana, where your kitchen is right there, wasn't common sense a few years back. When we started in 2014, a lot of people also internally also asked this. We had these doubts whether we will be able to make anything out of it or not. But because the customer was looking for it then as well, is when, thanks to our friends at Swiggy and Zomato, when that entire proposition got that much more strengthened, we were certainly beneficiaries of it because the customer expected us to be available. So yeah, for us, it was never a question of choosing one channel over the other, just asking this question: where does the customer expect us to be?
Fairly similar for us also, but when we built Country Delight, from day one, our thought process was to capture the customer and build a captive customer base. Our thought process was about giving better products, leveraging on better supply chain, better visibility into supply chain, and giving better products fresher to the customer. So our thought process has always been around ordering fresh and consuming fresh, and that's why we've never entertained the thought of going beyond the core channel, which is direct to home, because that fits in really beautifully in what we are building. And our thought primarily in the near future, for the next couple of years at least, is going to be primarily around direct to home. When we have a critical mass of products where freshness doesn't make a difference to the quality, and let's say better traceability or better processing ability makes a difference to the quality, there we can, and when there is a critical mass and there is viability of a different channel, then we would probably look at a different channel. But our core thesis has always been to build a lifestyle brand that serves high quality products directly to your doorstep. And it varies from business to business what their thought process is, but that's what we have at least thought about us.
Yeah, I think what you're trying to say is a customer comes to you for the service first and product second. Is that the thought process?
No, it's like customer wants both. They want the best product in the most convenient format. And if you go through the typical channel, that's not possible to give that.
For us, actually, customers used, and everyone has actually just listened to the customer, I can totally tell, and that's how you make your decisions. Customers used to ask us, where can I physically see this product because I like it, I want to try it. That was the first push towards offline, but the real push was that we wanted to have an offline presence to build trust, because online brands are not that trusted, at least back 4-5 years ago. And we thought the best form of offline billboard, anything there is, to give a tangibility to an online presence was an offline store. That was the first foray, and exactly what I said. Try something, see if it works. If it works, then you expand into it. Luckily for us, our stores are doing really well, so it is a form of growth.
So I think from a consumer standpoint, it's the same for everybody, right? Like be where the customer is, and for us, it was exactly the same. But I think the only thing to think about really is, are you ready from a business standpoint in terms of the supply chain? Because different industries, for example, for fashion, online, there's no space constraint, right? You can have thousands of styles at a point of time, but offline, you can have 100, 200, and then what are those best styles? How much inventory do you want to keep? How do you turn those around quick enough? So I think the way of working in maybe different channels could be different. And I think the place to decide that, of course, starting with the consumer, that are they kind of buying across channels? And second is to really say, when is the business ready? And we started offline only after maybe about 6 years of being online and saying that we really set in terms of our supply chain and the product. And now it's time to like experiment and learn kind of another part of the business, so as to say. So I think that's the only thing that I'd like to add.
Just to add a quick point, I guess most of it has been covered, but for me, fundamentally, it comes down to one thing, which is each of these channels, of course, have their own nuances, but the way to sort of get it right is not to treat them as distinct sales channels, but one feeding the other. So I think one of the advantages that D2C brands have is a lot of learning for you can happen on your brand.com, and that feeding your marketplace business and over time your offline business, and getting a flywheel going between the three is one way to think about the problem statement. Otherwise, you'll sort of have 3 distinct channels with their own complexities, their own nuances. And over time, you almost have 3 parallel businesses running with not having a flywheel going around them.
Got it. No, great. Thank you so much. Now, if I could kind of reverse your role and for my benefit, for the benefit of any aspiring entrepreneurs here, since we are talking niche, we are talking D2C and brands, and it's not in the talking points I circulated on email. So you will have to think through it. Can you individually share one category or one product offering which you would say, bhai yahan pe gap hai. I wish this category there was a better brand, or I'm personally pained or not very satisfied with this product category or service. Because that's where ultimately new founders can focus as a niche and build a business.
No, I think there are a lot of opportunities if one looks deep enough, and I feel like at least agri space is something that I'm very passionate about, and I think there is a humongous amount of opportunity in solving agricultural problems in India and building great businesses with tech as the primary lever. And there are a few businesses, but I think the depth can increase by an order of magnitude in a space like that.
Yeah, I think for me, a couple of ideas come to my mind. One is in this whole spectrum of slow fashion to fast fashion. I think there is still a massive white space when it comes to fast fashion across men, women, kids wear, etc. The second one, I think for me, is a little bit of sustainable fashion. Globally, I think it's a big theme. But in India, getting the product and price right for people to want sustainability, but at the same time, pay a premium for it. If you can get that balance right, there's a massive opportunity.
I'm going to go on the opposite of agri, but go right on the other side and say, I think nutraceuticals is a wide space in India, and my thought process is here. One, everyone now wants to be a better version of themselves and they have the money to do that. I think the current brands that are there are still small. It's very hard to figure out what's claimed versus what's real. So someone to come and disrupt that would be really good. And I think the third thing is if you take a leading indicator of where consumer needs head, the US nutraceuticals is already a very big market. It started with a lot of disposable income. And I think we are also heading there. So these are my 3 reasons of why nutraceuticals should be a top priority for elevation.
I would just, I don't know the nuances of that business, but a category that personally pains me is confidence on the vegetables and fruits that I eat every day. That's a category that personally pains me a lot. I think somebody or something should be done.
Great, and I think I just want to, close by saying, I mean, for me, like Prashanth's taken all my fashion points. So I think basically, no, I think the sector that's really, that where I feel there's a massive gap is education for the masses. While there are, of course, multiple super unicorns, playing in the education sector, but really, at a level where there are like, millions of kids around, villages, maybe slightly, tier 3+ kind of town cities, what's the standard of education there, what's the schooling there, and who can really come and templatize and standardize some of those things and improve that? Maybe, somebody can build a large business there.
Awesome, thank you. Just on time. I think I would love to have audience ask any questions if they have for a few minutes.
Maybe you can just stand and ask. You will need to be loud.
12 seconds.
Hi, the question to Nitin only. Actually, would like to know that as you are very successful in Delhi-NCR, and what happened exactly in Mumbai, and you struggled for 3 years? What exactly your findings that the reason of like being a failure in Mumbai?
We wanted to, very simple, straight answer. We wanted to make a mark in Bombay. We signed up the most expensive properties in that city. Not just that we signed up the most expensive properties in that city. Some of those properties were fundamentally incorrect. Let me just explain my point with one example. If any of you is familiar with Bombay, Lower Parel, Todi Mills, Kamla Mills has been possibly one of the hotspot for all food and beverage destinations, and we were like, how can we miss Todi Mill or Kamla Mill? Bloody, our business has not worked neither in Todi Mills nor in Kamla Mills, and we've put in disproportionate efforts, only to later realize that those are destination markets and not really impulse markets. And our business is an impulse business. It's not nobody plans and drives to a Chaayos if we are not right next to you at as Coca-Cola says, arm's length of desire. If we are not right next to where you are not going to come to Chaayos. Simple. That's the fundamental of our business. So no destination market will work for us, at least for the short term. This is us deciphering it in 2017. So for next 3-4 years, no destination market will work for us, is what we learned for ourselves. And we've till now refrained away from core destination markets.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. I'm really sorry we're out of time. I know there are more questions, but we have the keynote speaker waiting online. Thank you so much for the panel. Thank you very much, Deepak. It was a wonderful discussion. And D2C is clearly hot and buzzing, and it's going to be through the challenging year ahead. I'd also just take the opportunity to thank our platinum sponsors, Sequoia Capital, for their support. Sequoia has been very supportive of TIE and India Internet Day, and of course the entire ecosystem. They were the top investors in India all of last year and probably will be this year too.